everyone, welcome to the FSP podcast. I'm Tim Ebenezer, Managing Partner at FSP, and today I'm here with David Smith. David is Costain's Digital Transformation Director and is leading a large-scale digital transformation at Costain. We'll be getting into a little bit on his journey into leadership, into how he's been on the journey of digital transformation over many years, and also what the concerns of the infrastructure sector and construction sector are today, as well as wider areas that he's had experience in. But let's go over and meet David now. David, would you like to tell us a little bit about you, your recent experience, who you are, what you'd
sure.
like to do?
So I've been in IT and technology for 30 years now, so nearly 30 years, wishing my life away. And I've worked in various different industries, from chemicals to even chocolate. But in the last sort of 15 years, I've been in construction and defence, and just recently started at Costain to support them in their digital journey. But yeah, I've been at Balfour Beatty and Amy doing their digital transformation, and then more recently in the defence business. So it's been quite a journey, different industries, and but similarities, and being able to bring sort of learning and experience from previous roles into each new one to understand how to sort of shape the business I'm in to get the most out of the digital transformation.
Yeah, really interesting. I guess there's some commonalities between those industries, levels of manufacturing, infrastructure, high focus on safety.
Correct. Yeah, they're both quite highly regulated environment. Defence and construction highly regulated, etc. There is a big thing on safety. I suppose the differences though would be, from a defence point of view, it's a lot really centralised, and so data is always seems to be quite centralised, whereas in construction it's really fragmented. Data seems to be all over the place, and so that is one of the key and critical differences, because when it comes to digital, data is pretty much the unlocking key for everything.
Yeah, and I know you had a bit of experience in the sort of cross-section between construction and defence as well, in one of your roles where you were sort of doing defence projects in that construction environment.
Yeah. So at Amy, I was looking after their secure infrastructure division from a technology and digital transformation perspective, and that had large-scale MOD contracts, and so we had that crossover between how do you work in the private sector and also how do you work in the military sector.
And you've been working in Costain now for
7 months now, I think. Yeah, 7 months. So I joined in March. And
what's really exciting for you about the opportunity ahead at Costain? What are the things that you're looking forward to getting your teeth into?
Well, the good thing about Costain is already really performing well. So there's good results, and there is a good trajectory on what they're trying to achieve and a good order book. But getting in there, I can actually already see opportunities for improving. And so when making a difference, it's going to really improve the performance of the organisation, make our customers' lives better, make the outcomes better, but also help our people, do things in a better way and make their lives easier too.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I guess that's the big opportunity we all have with digital, is try to make people's jobs easier, try to make things more efficient, and help with the overall productivity challenge, I guess, that the UK has.
Yeah,
at
correct.
The moment.
And I suppose the other key thing to mention there for construction is safety. So obviously keeping safety, and making it a safer place to operate, and digital can help in that space too.
Yeah, that might be an interesting point to come back onto in a little while, because obviously with the rise of technologies like AI, there's an interesting question about how far you can go with AI and the impacts that can have on safety, but also how it could also help with creating much safer environments.
Yeah,
and
correct.
where those boundaries are. So yeah, we'll definitely come back to that. But it'd be really interesting just to understand from your recent experience. You said you were in a defence organisation recently, and then coming back into construction. What similarities have you seen between those sectors? And I guess in terms of digital adoption and how people are actually engaging with digital tools as a whole? Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I think from a defence perspective, they do drive towards digital and want to use digital, but there used to be restrictions on what they could do and how they could put things in the cloud, etc. From a security point of view, they're on a journey and moving towards the cloud in that space, and so that's helping. But from a construction point of view, it's more about the fragmentation and agreements they have with their clients. Means that it's really difficult to actually get everyone on board on a digital journey, because if the contracts are written in a certain way that doesn't try and get you to drive efficiencies and digitization, it makes it difficult to actually go that way.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I guess there's probably a bit of a difference there where defence is quite, I guess has a larger amount of jobs now that are general information worker type jobs, whereas obviously construction organisations ultimately are there to build real things.
Correct. To build, maintain, and look after assets. And so you have a real split in the population in the workforce. So you have half, sort of more than half are actually delivering and building and supporting, whereas then the rest are in offices, and so they have a different need and a different want from it comes from digital, especially if you're on the roads and fixing potholes, or that's a different space to from being in an office and using a computer.
Yeah, and my experience with defence organisations, especially those that are maybe partially quite oriented around digital technologies and maybe cybersecurity and that aspect of defence, but also have more traditional maybe manufacturing or creating drones or testing munitions. Those are more traditional parts of the business. You can almost end up with this sort of two-tier culture in an organisation.
Plus also, defence companies also need to be paid and need to pay their employees, and so their back office and how they also run their organisations. And so you tend to find quite far advances when customer-led and customer delivery, solutions. But when you go back into how an organisation is operating, it's still operating as other organisations may do, but there's leaps that can be made in that space.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So I guess maybe some similarities in certain sort of demographics within those defence organisations to construction workers or construction users, I should say. Yeah,
correct. And like big infrastructure projects like HS2, etc., are trying to push some of the boundaries in what we're using, using digital tools, AI, robotics, etc. And so there's more of a drive for that now than there was before, even though that capability used to be around.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And have you seen anything sort of change in, you've been in construction industry for many years, as you've started this new role in Costain, have you seen anything sort of markedly different given you've been out of that sector for sort of 3 or 4 years?
I think the difference is the awareness of what is out there and the drive to act, and people actually want digital to come along and support them and make things better for them. I think previously it was always centre-led. It was trying to be pushed from the centre to try and make improvements. Whereas now I think you can see it from actually the projects and the people out in the field who are looking for ways to improve the way they're delivering.
Yeah, and I definitely think we're at a time where there's people joining the workforce who have very digitally enabled lives, and their own personal workflows are very digital, and therefore when they come into a work environment, they sort of look at it through that lens a bit more. Yeah. Certainly seen that as a general change across the industry in the last 4 or 5 years, and I don't know if that's the same in construction with sort of the next generation of people coming both into internal roles and site roles. No,
definitely is the case. When we look at our apprentices and graduates who are coming into the organisation, they are expecting things to be, they're expecting good technology to hold in their hands. They're expecting good, computers, etc., and be able to do certain things, that they can do in their normal life, and so it makes it, it can be sometimes a bit of a challenge, and that's one of the things we've got to make sure we're looking after and keeping them, so our retention rates, of those people, because they're going to drive us into the next space, and they're going to show us, what we can do better.
No, it's a really good point, and I think the companies that win actually in any sector are going to be the ones that are able to retain people over time, and part of that retention is definitely going to be not being seen to lag behind on that front, because if people can see obvious ways to improve the business or that seem obvious to them, and they can't see sort of movement in that direction from a business, it's quite hard for them to stay engaged with what they're doing, I think.
No, absolutely. That's part of, my role would be looking at those ideas that, if people come forward with thoughts about how we can improve the organisation, that would be part of my responsibility to see how we can adopt, and if it's possible to adopt their ideas and put them forward.
So where do you think digital technology can have sort of the biggest impact in construction at the moment? So if you're thinking about safety, sustainability, delivery speed, quality, all of these aspects, where's your sort of feeling in terms of where you can have the biggest impact as a digital transformation person?
All of them, okay. But they're interlinked, you see, because they are. If it's vital that we put our people to work safely. And digital can help in that when we're looking at digital permitting, making sure we're understanding our risks as we're going to work. We want to make sure that we deliver things first time, so we don't having to go back and fix things. And that too is supported by digital, to make sure our plans, our drawings, etc., are all in the right place. Then when it comes to efficiencies and driving productivity, exactly the same. Because if we're delivering things in the first place and the first time, that means we're more productive straight away. We can get to work quicker because our plans are optimum. We've got the right plant and material in place. We've got the right people in place, all supported by our digital and data, of how we plan it and how we deliver it. And so they're all interlinked. And so digital has a part to play in all of that.
Yeah, and I guess that idea of the fully connected site is getting closer, but it's still somewhat far away for many organisations. There's quite a lot of work to do. Hence, roles like yours to make that happen, right?
Absolutely, but it's and it is an end-to-end thing. You've got to start back when we're looking at the work that we're going to be bidding for and going for. How do we? It's much easier to start with the right solutions than try and get the solutions in when a project is well underway. And so if we think about our work winning point and how digital can support the delivery, we can then make sure that we get things right up front, and then it makes it easier all the way through.
Yeah, and I guess, as you said, a lot of it does come back to having the right data. I guess that's ultimately where building information modelling standards came from, was that desire to have a consistent way to understand all of the information that went into creating a building. What have you seen over the last sort of 10, 15 years as that sort of started to take hold? I guess it had a lot of promise in terms of being able to standardise the data that was that was needed to keep a building site operational, but doesn't seem like it's necessarily delivered on that for many organisations.
So I suppose, BIM's obviously been around for an awful long time, and there was a drive, and there is now, the government was pushing how to use it. And so there was general awareness, but I think we are past the awareness phase and we are well into the adoption phase. But it has just taken time because, again, it's marrying up the commerciality of an agreement and what a customer is looking for against what we're delivering. And so that's where some of that challenge has come from. But I think now BIM is becoming more and more part of what we're doing. It's not just about, we've got the right plans. It goes right the way through to the parts, and how do we then maintain that asset beyond? Because it's going to be about, to support the country and its infrastructure challenges, we need to be able to build something that's going to be lasting, and also then how do we maintain that beyond the construction phase? And that's all part of that digital flow and digital data.
Yeah, and I guess that construction data, as much as it can be shared across the industry, obviously you can have you can have a lot of benefit by just looking at it within your own organisation, but being able to look at more and more data across the industry would be really helpful. Do you think that we're getting closer to that point where, in major projects where there's maybe five to 10 major contractors all working together on that project, where we can actually be in the position to share that sort of digital data?
It does work, because I was going to say, when there are JVs and partnerships, and HS2 is a great example, there is, lots of different contractors working and using a same common data environment and actually sharing information and working together. And so it does work and does add value. Then when we look in the water industry, we're into AMP8 now, which is, in full flight. And so it's about how do we, we've got different water authorities, but they may be using different data sets and different tools to operate. And so that makes it quite challenging. And so as a supporter in that industry, we should be talking to the customers about what's the long-term benefit of using a different type of approach so that we can share data better. And so, it shouldn't be we need to change our tools to work with the different customers. We have our best-in-class way of operating and share the data that's needed with our customers.
Yeah, and I think that collaboration and having common collaboration standards, interoperability would be great. I mean, we're working with a major defence organisation at the moment who are doing a large capital programme, lots of investment, lots of different building contractors involved with it. And actually one of the big problems we're helping them to solve is how do you get all those contractors talking to each other and actually exchanging information in the right way, so
securely as well.
Yeah, and secure. Well, exactly, in that environment securely, and also looking very in a very pointed manner then at different aspects. So build efficiency and delivery time is one, safety is another, sustainability and making sure everything's done to the same standards. Actually bringing together that interoperability, bringing those standards together will be of actually the national interest at that point.
100% a national interest. And I think you mentioned sustainability, and that was the other driver force. Digital is definitely going to help there, because, we need to, the construction industry kind of by definition isn't a sustainable industry because we are pouring concrete, we're using, steel, etc. And so it's about how do we minimize the impact of what we are doing. If we do something once, that stops us reusing and using more waste. And so, and we're more efficient. And so all benefits everything.
Yeah. And one of the things and again, it's probably been 5 or 6 years since I worked closely with construction, but one of the things I'm surprised doesn't seem to have moved on so much in that time is the use of sensors on sites and actually gathering data from all the different data points that you can get on site and using that to feed intelligent systems. So that, for example, you minimised the fuel usage on sites and things like that. Do you think that's an area that could be improved?
Well,
or you think
it's definitely improved in the 5 to 6 years that you've talking about there. There are certain things that are done on sites now. So, it's an interesting one where we, idling machinery, that's a bad thing for the sustainability. And so we've looked at solutions about how do we, people keep things, machinery running part of the time because they're cold.
Yeah.
And so how do we keep them warm without the machine running? And so that sort of thing. How do we use safety? And that is, sensors around the plant that says if there's a person nearby, alarms go off, etc. So those things are being used. And then it comes to how do we do surveys, environmental surveys, bridge surveys, etc. All can be done now without an individual having to be putting themselves in harm by being somewhere, because you can use drones for that sort of thing and other sensors. And so that is part to play. But the key thing about all of those is all data, all data driven.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, those sensors, being able to bring them into a data platform that you can actually do something with, I guess, ultimately is, it's what you want to have, something that then the business at large, whether that's, financial stakeholders, project operations stakeholders, engineers, etc., can consume that data in a way that's meaningful to them, that lets them do what they need with it, rather than,
correct,
as we've seen many firms sort of running on spreadsheets all over the place.
But it's also cyclical, isn't it? So we take that data and we should be feeding that back into how we operate and how we deliver things in the future, so that it is a continual thing. If you go work winning, we take the data of something that's been delivered and understand that, so that when we feed that in, we're able to actually offer the customer more certainty the next time we're delivering it.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, with that idea of sensors and how it's sort of moving on at the moment, do you see then building things like digital twins of large projects? Do you see that being a natural next step?
Absolutely, and it does happen today. So, digital twins have been around for a while and are used, but it is again,
but they're not adopted at large, really.
It's not across at scale. But it will become more so because it is becoming more affordable to do so. It did used to be traditionally quite expensive to do these things. Yeah, for sure. And so now it's more affordable, more efficient to do so than it was before. And so, it will become more common across all the deliveries that we do.
And where do you see that having the biggest impact in terms of, just talked about, sustainability, safety, all of those sort of factors that come into a project? Where do you see digital twins having a really big impact?
I know it's maybe a weak answer, but I think across all of them, because it's going to show you everything to do with what you're going to be, delivering, and so you can start understanding the risks and the safety issues. You can also start thinking about making it predictable delivery, so you deliver it once, and because you're planning it full end to end, and you can start bringing in the construction, and you can understand and see it. You can do, off-site builds and bring in, and so again, less people are going to be impacted by that. And so safety impact, environmental impact, sustainability, and performance.
Because I guess ultimately, if you're more productive and more efficient as an organisation, you do have an impact on you're naturally more sustainable then, because you're using less fuels, you're using less machinery, etc., and hopefully less materials. If you do that, you're also hopefully impacting less people on site, so more safe. That makes perfect sense. I think the power of those digital twins in being able to sort of do the what if analysis is a huge benefit, and something, as you say, we've probably seen in small pockets on maybe some really large,
really big things,
projects that could bear the cost of it.
And it also helps when it comes to through life of the asset management. Because if you've got a good digital twin, that will help you when it comes to the maintenance and the long-term support of that asset.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And if you take the, in our industry, we're looking after roads, etc. Other, there's also schools, hospitals, etc. that get built. Then you've got to think about the long-term maintenance of that, and you can actually drill right down into core components and work out, if there's still warranty on a piece of kit that's hidden in the building. So
no, that makes a lot of sense. I guess again comes back to data, having the right data about the site, about the assets on the site, about the behaviours on the site, and all of those key aspects. So taking that then as a case in point, how do you plan, or what's the process that you go through with an organisation to help them go on the journey of actually getting use out of their data? Because I think many organisations, I think we've had the various cliches over the years. Data's the new oil. Data's the biggest.
I was about to say data is the new infrastructure.
Yeah.
Because it is. It's going to be critical. It does reshape how we plan, think, and we'll do things for our organisation and for the industry. It's going to be critical. But the journey isn't an easy journey if your data is fragmented and you then have to think about how do you bring it all together, how do you make sure you curate it in the right way to maximise the benefit for it. And again, just having the data in the right place and it doesn't give you the answers. You also need to know how you want to interrogate it and understand the questions you're trying to answer with that data to get that out.
Yeah, and I guess many organisations, it's been sort of an untapped asset. Are there sort of for other people who might be watching who are transformation professionals, are there any particular sort of approaches or techniques you take with an organisation? You're going into a new organisation now, when you're thinking about data and you're looking at the environment, that you sort of go, right, this is how I'm going to take them from the point they are of maybe lower maturity to a higher maturity point?
It's a good question. And, so it does depend on the organisation. And so when I went into Costain, it wasn't just to focus on data. I was looking at the overarching organisation, how it was thinking about things. And so I did one-to-one interviews with close to 50 individuals who are, are the leaders of the organisation, to get their understanding of what they thought digital meant as well. Because also it's not just a journey of data; it's a journey of people understanding what digital actually means. It doesn't just mean an IT system or data. It's actually proper transformation. It impacts the people, the systems, the processes, and how an organisation operates. And so it is true transformation. So when we talk digital transformation, it is actually transforming. And so, but when it comes to the data, it's understanding, what you're trying to get from that data. And so, different parts of the organisation will be looking for different things. And so, you want certainty of data, and so financial, finance planning and making sure that you can get your strategies correct. And so there's different approaches to the different ways of thinking, and then also program directors and project delivery people are trying to how do they optimize their delivery path. And so it's what sort of data sets are going to help them do that. And so it's just working out what the challenges people are trying to overcome, and then look at how do we solve the data issues.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I guess you raise a really good point there, where I think often it's easy as sort of IT focused professionals or digital professionals to assume that everybody's job is as consumed with these things as ours is, where, particularly working in an organisation like a construction organisation, project directors, project engineers, they are focused on their building project that they need to get built. Absolutely. Not on data entry, not on data quality, not on all these things that might be really important and might be important to their outcome as well, but there's an education piece as well with them to sort of get them on that journey, isn't there? And also to show that you're not just introducing friction for them, you're making their life easier somewhat.
Absolutely, because we need to be additive. We can't be just getting in the way, that's for sure. But I think the other dimension that is in the construction industry is our procurement and supply chain as well, because we are not just the only people delivering our projects. So we have a supply chain that supports us, as do most of the large tier one organizations in the country. And so it's how do we interact with them as well? And so their data and our data need to, be joined together to support decision making for ourselves and them.
Yeah, no, it makes a huge amount of sense. And I guess when you've taken organizations through that journey of sort of learning more. There's obviously lots of talk about digital literacy, data literacy, AI literacy now, more and more cyber literacy. What are some of the things you find really work in, I guess, particularly construction organisations where you've got people who, it's not like maybe law firms or professional services firms where you've got lots of information workers who are spending a lot of time with their corporate systems and digital technology. This might be a little bit more of a adjunct piece for many of your users. How do you sort of approach that for these sorts of organisations?
It's true. Data literacy and digital literacy and how is going to be critical. And so we have to bring our workforce on that journey as well. So as you rightly say, we have, quite a diverse population in our organisation. Obviously, we've got the people working at the front, and then we've got the office workers. But each of them have different needs and wants. And so we have to focus and understand what their needs and wants are and what will be in it for them to make it better. And so I think, tomorrow's workforce are going to be more digitally literate, but we've got to try and upskill everyone today. And so that's one of my passions that I try when I get into places, to understand how we can support everybody in upskilling themselves to understand what we're trying to achieve. And it is about bringing people on that journey. So, if you're transforming something, there's an inherent fear that it's going to impact them negatively. And so you've got to try and spin that to be a more of a positive impact. And so the business change of what you're trying to do, comes into the play, and bring them on that journey, understand what's in it for them, what's going to be the benefit.
Yeah. That we always find that really important in any transformation. People go through that change curve, and that's adapting to the change that's happening, and equally you have to take them through those stages of being aware of the change, building desire, etc. But that understanding of what's in it for them, and I think that journey of making sure that they understand that through the various stages of that journey, things are going to get better for them. And if they can adapt to that, it's going to be
Their opportunities.
Their opportunities are there for sure. No, it's a really, really interesting point. And it wouldn't be a podcast today if we didn't touch on AI and what's happening in that space. Obviously, I guess generative AI is a little bit far from building buildings at the moment and generating buildings. But have you seen any good applications of AI in construction projects recently?
So definitely have. We just have to be careful, I think, about branding things AI, because there is a crossover of stuff that used to be, available and just using data analytics, etc., is being called AI. But definitely. So we talked about safety, point of work risk assessments, and how we do our work permits. So when we're doing our work permits, you take photographs of the environment and you write down and you put on the system what you're going to be doing. AI now can analyze that photo and make sure it matches what you're talking about, but also then highlight any other risks that you may not have already highlighted. And so those sort of things are really good. Means that we can be more efficient and also safer at the same time. But they're also real world applications. So in Costain, we've helped with some of our partners develop a system called Atris, which is the automated tunnel robotics installation system. And that's use 3D imaging and AI to install tunnel brackets and make sure they're installed in the appropriate way with the right tensions on their bolts, etc. And so that removes the need for a person to be put in danger. And robotics and AI are working together to deliver that. So that's a really good advancement.
Yeah,
and real world, and actually,
absolutely direct impact on safety there. And really interesting to hear about the use of image recognition technology to also identify, where there may be potential risks in imagery from sites. I think that's a great use case. I think it'll be quite interesting to see how potentially different forms of AI can be used in construction. I think robotics is going to be a big part of it because of the physical nature of construction, but also whether there are opportunities for some of the processes around
100%.
Construction to really be improved to a great extent, especially around things like quality. I know a huge amount of time and expense for building firms go both into quality checks, into snagging, into making sure sites are left in the right state, and through the combination of photography, drone technology, and AI, it feels like there's an opportunity to make that a lot more efficient.
Definitely there, I agree. But across all the end-to-end processes, across the whole organisation, there'll be opportunities to improve. And if you think about, we've got complex programs that we're delivering with schedules that are really, really quite large schedules and lots of moving parts and lots of supply chain feeding in. That will all be helped with AI. How we can optimize that schedule and get people in the right place at the right time will be helped. But again, it all comes back to data. And if your data is fragmented and not in the right place, AI doesn't work so well with that. And so,
I guess one of the benefits of generative AI more recently has been its ability to work with somewhat imperfect data.
Correct, yeah.
And I think that presents potentially a big opportunity as well for lots of industries, but construction amongst them. I guess another area where not necessarily AI but digital technology could help is that there's obviously been over the last 10 to 15 years some high profile cases where construction projects and construction organizations have run themselves too leanly and had huge supply chains behind them, where when in the unfortunate case that a firm goes down, there's a ripple effect left around. I think the whole payments area between suppliers as well is quite an interesting one to look at in terms of the opportunities for digitizing the link between data on the site and people getting paid. I think these sorts of areas feel like things that can be used to help the overall economy, the whole construction economy as much as anything else.
There is vast improvements in that space already. So from delivery to getting paid, is much more digital and throughput and less impactful on the individuals going through. So less people have to look at, if you're looking at the accounts payable process, that's much more streamlined than it's ever been before because of digital and will help. AI will help even more in that space.
Yeah, no, and it's that's a great example of where those sort of back office processes that do span multiple industries but have a very big impact on something like construction, where you have a very big supply chain. You have lots of typically quite small organisations relying on on organisations like Costain and other prime contractors. So,
that's true.
Yeah, really good opportunity to use technology to improve the overall sector. Sort of counterpoint with AI is always the question about safety and not just safety from a construction site perspective, but also cyber safety. What do you think, or how well do you think the sector has been set up in terms of cyber resilience as a whole?
It's better, definitely better. That's for sure. I think when it comes to adherence to some of the core standards, thinking about Cyber Essentials Plus and ISO 27001, those are becoming more commonplace. And so, at Costain, we are ensuring that all of our supply chain have those as well, because it's essential for us to have it. And so the people, the organizations we work with should be having it too, because, especially, data is going to be flowing all the way through our supply chain, and we are responsible to our customer for that data, and so they need to be responsible to us. So that's important to us, and talking about AI, security in that space is going to be critical too, because as digital becomes more prevalent, it's opening up new attack surfaces, and so we need to make sure that they're secure and safe for our data and our customers' data.
Yeah, and I guess that's the counterpoint that always goes with organizational collaboration, is you need to have some level of control of your data and the ability to control your data to allow those flows, because clearly you will have some proprietary information that you don't want to inadvertently leak across those boundaries, but you do want all of the right information to flow in order to facilitate collaboration.
There will be IP in there, and we need to make sure that that's secure. It is going to be a concern, and needs to be something that we consider when we're doing any of our projects and digital transformation. You're going to be looking at that 100%.
Yeah, and I think every sector, we touched on defence earlier. They're looking at that challenge very seriously in terms of how to manage the need to collaborate with lots of suppliers. It's another environment where there's lots of JVs, there's lots of consortiums working together for large infrastructure and services programs, and they need to be able to work together. But they also operate in an environment which is traditionally sort of walled garden, traditionally very insular, which actually it mirrors construction, where organisations wanted to keep their way of doing things, their their IP, their know-how very much protected from other
very
organisations. So yeah, it's a very interesting challenge. And I guess alongside that, then is also a big part of construction industry challenges is continuity, business continuity, and making sure you can continue to operate should there be a event of some kind. And how do you look at that problem?
So, that's a really good question, because business continuity is critical for everyone, but we need to look at it from we've got a supply chain, as you mentioned, that are really, are looking to us, and we support our people and our customers. And so, we look at it from a value chain perspective and go, where do we need to make sure that we're protecting, and look at it from that way, and then think about what can impact that value chain, and how do we protect ourselves and ensure that we've got the right processes in place, because if something does happen, what do we do and how do we react to that so that we can actually still or get back to operations as soon as possible? Yeah,
a little bit of a loaded question, because as we worked with you a little bit on that business continuity scenario, but it was really interesting to see an organisation being really forward looking. I thought about it in terms of how do you make sure you keep the sites open, keep the sites operating, make sure the right digital systems are available to allow the most important tasks of the day to happen at the right time.
Correct, and looking at over a period of time. So absolutely. Something happens. What can you do in the first week? What's impacted? What's impacting in the second week, month? That sort of thing, so that you can understand where your pain points will be.
Absolutely. And when you have digital systems controlling everything from access to sites all the way through to the actual payment of suppliers, it's a really important part of the overall machine of the business working. Correct. Isn't it? And fundamentally, if people can't get onto the sites, they can't do very much. Really interesting. And I guess we touched on it a little bit when we talked about literacy, but obviously digital transformation is 50% technology, but 50% people, and people change. How do you approach that challenge when you come to an organisation? How do you get people on that journey of wanting to change, not just wanting to learn, but being prepared that things are going to be different for them?
No, it's again a good point, and the way I'm approaching it at Costain is that it's a digital transformation as a whole, but I'm looking at things as individual programs beneath, and so each of those programs are going to look at their impact on the business and the people as a whole, and understand what that change impact means to them for each piece. Because if I try to look at it as a big transformation as a whole, it would be too much to actually look at how's it going to impact each individual. If I'm looking at bringing in AI, or if I'm looking at how do I sort some of the processes in finance, or if I'm looking at how do we do predictable delivery, different people are impacted in different ways, and so I'm breaking it up into individual programs so that we can then look at the impact of the people and work out how do we bring them on that journey. But again, like I said to you earlier, it's really about looking at what's in it for them. And so that, I know it sounds really simple, and it's not. Business change is really quite complex sometimes, especially with a diverse population. But you've got to go back to the core of it. What's in it for them?
Yeah, for sure. I think as we've sort of touched on at various points during this conversation, whilst technology changes, and obviously AI is a big topic of conversation at the moment, cybersecurity, many organisations have been hit over the last couple of years, there's still some things that are fundamentally very similar in terms of whether we call it digital transformation, or it was IT transformation before that, or it was information systems before that. Some things have stayed very much the same in terms of good practice looks like making sure organisations understand the benefits out of a program, and then they spend time and invest effort at a senior level on realising those benefits. And that's something we've found is really important through these transformation programs, is making sure senior stakeholders around the board table are genuinely responsible for realising the benefits from digital transformation. And those are real business benefits that are brought out.
100%. And benefits realisations is critical. And we need to have people buy into those benefits and stand behind those benefits and say that they will be delivered, so that then, it's not just me on my own trying to push a digital transformation. I need the exec with me. I need the senior leaders in the organisation with me, so that we can actually make it happen as a collective, because it is everyone on that same journey. And so if there is benefits and expected return on investment on certain things, there is clearly going to be, budget holders who are going to be, responsible for helping make those become realized. And so it's not about a single point in time.
Yeah.
It goes on. And that's the other thing we need to think about. Digital transformation isn't just for the programs delivered and then that's done. It's supposed to impact and positively impact the business for 5-10 years to come. And so some of those benefits are going to be quite a way off in the future.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And maybe not understood until things have actually been embedded and then people understand how they can use things in a better way.
I mean, fundamentally, digital transformation is part of business transformation.
Yeah,
and it is, and it needs to be adopted by all anyone whose area it's affecting as such. I guess in terms of skills that you see the workforce needing inside construction going forward, because that'll be an important part of that change. Do you see anything new that construction workers and people in the construction industry are going to need to do and understand over where they've been over the last sort of 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, well, we talked about digital literacy. I think that's one critical thing. People, I want people to understand why they're doing something and the outcomes of so when they're completing a work permit or they're filling out using a system and just completing. What's that going to do, and what's that why that data is important, because then that gets them thinking what they're doing it for and how they can improve it and etc. So that's important. I think collaboration and digital collaboration is going to be how do we work in a more collaborative environment, because everything's going to be more connected, and so that'll be important. Construction generally isn't agile because it's, but thinking more in an agile way about how we can do something differently will be interesting. I think that'll be a key thing for the construction industry over the next few years as well.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And if you fast forwarded 5 years, David, as we sort of think forward that far, and it's you've seen many sort of long programs over your career, I'm sure. What would real success look like at the end of 5 years as you look back over sort of what you've achieved in Costain and maybe planning out a next phase of what you're going to do?
So I think for me, in 5 years' time will be if I can see digital integration across all aspects of the organisation, so that from work winning, planning, delivery, build, operations, project closure, etc. If that was all integrated seamlessly, that would be amazing. Digital literacy across the organisation would be cool. And I think, if we are able to deliver with fewer surprises and with more certainty, that'd be brilliant.
If you had a piece of advice for an aspiring transformation professional, someone who's maybe working in digital technology in some way, in IT project management, in digital construction perhaps, what piece of advice would you give them in sort of going on that journey towards the sort of leadership that you're doing today?
Yeah, I think one thing to always think about is not to try and solution straight away. So think about the problem, think about the outcomes that are being trying to achieve, and work through that rather than going, right, I want a shiny new toy, because I think that is a challenge that a lot of organizations do. They look for the new tool to fix everything and be a silver bullet, and it never is. I think transformation is a journey. It's not just something that happens overnight, and so you need to be planning for something that's going to take a little bit of time and do it in a controlled approach, because it can be very disruptive if you don't do it in the right way.
Yeah, for sure. That makes loads of sense, and I think those transformations that just focus on getting, as you said, shiny technology in don't really ever deliver a business outcome. And the other thing we've seen a little bit of is people coming in and saying everything's bad, I've got to replace everything. And actually, there's often good things that you can find to build on, as well as obviously those opportunities to create new. So obviously, when you're doing one of these large transformation programs or new transformation initiatives or a new phase of transformation, you often have to build a team. You might be building some internal capability. You might be using partners. How do you make that choice as to what the right approach is? It
does depend on the program and the size and the timelines involved. Generally, it's kind of a blended approach, and so we'll have internal capability, but we'll also bring in partners. And trusted partners are essential, really. I don't think many digital transformations would be achievable without partners that come in, because they bring in industry expertise. They're trusted. They understand the environments they're working in, and so as long as we find a partner that we can really feel as though we're working as a team, it doesn't become commercial. I think previously things, organizations and projects become too commercial. I try and keep it more of as a partnership, because there's a benefit to everyone to get it right. And so that's how it needs to operate.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, a big part of our ethos at FSP is finding those win-win solutions. So, I think generally when you get into a very contractual situation with partners or suppliers, it can be win-lose on one side or the other. And crafting something that's genuinely win-win requires effort on both sides. But how do you sort of ascertain that partner? How do you identify an organisation that's going to work that way with you?
Again, there's no silver bullet with that. It really depends on getting to know the team or the business that you're going to be engaging with. And so when you do go out for a tender, make sure that you're going out asking some probing questions to get you to understand the way that organisation operates, and then obviously meet those people as well. Don't just do it at a remote tender. Get to meet people, and I think as well, understand their history, what they delivered before, and if you can sense there's a partnership that can be built there, then that's the way to go, because the one thing is for sure, we're not going to know all the answers. And so bringing in partners to help us brings in another dimension that brings in additional capability and knowledge.
That makes loads of sense. I mean, I think back to when we first met, that was through a tender process. And I think that advice on getting in the room with people is really important, because there are different types of people in the world, and there are some people you'll work with really productively. And actually part of the challenge for any leader of these sort of transformation initiatives is building a team of people, whether it's internal capability or external partners, who you can genuinely gel with and build trust with, and know that fundamentally these programs all go through waves of going really well, but also of things going badly, and that you need to be in a position where you're all working together at that point and all sort of pushing in the same direction.
It is about because everyone probably who's watching will know that this is most programs don't go according to plan. And so having a trusted partner who, is in there with you trying to support when things are not going well, just as when things are going great, is really important.
Really interesting talking to you today, David. Thank you for your time.
No, absolute pleasure.
So that's it for another episode of the FSP podcast today. It's been great being joined by David from Costain. Hopefully you've learned something about the future of digital construction. I think there's some really interesting points there about safety, how it's being changed by AI and robotics. I'll be looking up Atris after this conversation and trying to find out a bit more about it. But hopefully also you can take your own steps towards being a transformational leader in your sector and being able to effect digital change in what you're doing.